The Prowler, Part 4. As I stepped foot out of the carriage, about to retrieve the morning paper to eagerly read of my deadly excursion last night, I realized that my assumptions were correct. Things were different now. There was a buzz amongst the West End masses, gossiping of my deadly deed. The rustling of newspapers permeated the air as I passed each clueless soul. I could hear the newspaper boy shouting on the corner, "Prowler strikes again! This time the upper class feels his wrath. Get your copy of the London Journal before it runs out." Jesus, I best be quick, I thought. These common animals are taking every copy. Move aside, you savages. Make way, goddamn you, I shouted, as I elbowed my way past several individuals that could only best be described as livestock. I tossed the boy a halfpence and grabbed the last paper. Bloody bastards almost robbed me of my news. As I walked back through the crowd, back to the comfort of my carriage, so I could read in peace, I could hear the murmurs and mumblings of the rabble as they read the details. One portly woman even fainted. What a delight, I thought. I hope she died from fright. Just make sure you add her to my count. I don't want to be cheated now. I devilishly thought as I stepped over her body. As we rode back to the manor, I was finally able to read in peace. The headline was catching. Prowler does unthinkable. Nobility feels his terror. Slays Lady Shackelford. It's a good start now. Let's see what Mr. Parker Johns has to say about last night, shall we? Last night's guests in attendance of one of Lord Shackelford's lavish costume parties were left frightened and dismayed as the daughter of the shipping baron was found hanging from the balcony by her intestines. The young Lady Elizabeth Shackelford, aged 22, only daughter of Lord Arthur Shackelford, shipping baron and man responsible for building some of Her Majesty's finest ships, was savagely murdered last night at her father's costume affair. There are reports that she last talked to a few guests and was last seen heading out to the balcony before she was brutally hung with her own entrails. She was completely gutted, and all of her internal organs were taken as trophies. There is a rumor that one partygoer laid eyes on a costume individual heading out onto the balcony not long after Lady Shackelford, but the man's identity could not be confirmed because said individual was wearing a mask and cloak. The witness's identity has not been revealed in accordance with Scotland Yard's wishes for the protection of said witness and until further questioning can ensue. The London Journal and the Realm weep over the loss of one of its most influential families. This brute must be apprehended as soon as possible, and his heinous spree swiftly brought to an end. On that note, Scotland Yard has a new man in charge of the Prowler killings, a young inspector at the top of his class, coming out of the academy. Mr. Clive Richards has officially been pegged to lead this investigation as of this morning. Godspeed to you, sir. A city and nation eagerly await your success. Also, Scotland Yard and West End officials have put a strict curfew in place for the time being, and any individual caught on the streets past 9 o'clock in the evening will immediately be arrested on the spot. No timetable has been mentioned when said curfew will be lifted. Until tomorrow, dear readers, stay safe. Son of a bitch! This curfew nonsense is going to slow up my nightly excursions a bit. I really caused an uproar with last night's slaying of that high society wench. No matter. I can take a few nights to rest and stoke the fires of my bloodlust. Plus, I want to do my due diligence on this young upstart inspector. It's a tad bit infuriating To think that the upper echelon bastards at Scotland Yard think a young unseasoned inspector can bring me down. Oh well, they'll eventually learn that they are no match for my prowess. While they're out scouring the alleyways and streets of the West End, looking for some common butcher or doctor, they just don't realize that the Prowler is a proper gentleman, hailing from a family of nobility and prominence. They'll never suspect me. They'll never suspect that the son of the 7th Earl of Burlington is the bloodthirsty Prowler. Because of my status, I can move in and out of places people would only dream of, and that includes the police station. You see, not only am I the Earl-in-waiting to seat Burlington, but my brother Nigel is the Commissioner of Her Majesty's West End Police Service. Oh, if Nigel only knew that it is I, his older brother, that has been the cause of his problems the past few nights. I shall use my status and connections to get close to this young inspector and see if I may jostle loose some clues. Maybe even try and sneak the Prowler file from his office. See what they have to say about me. The date is September 30th. It's almost been a week since my last victim. I'm getting antsy to get back out on those cobblestone streets, to stalk my prey from the shadows. I'm thirsty for blood. I'm thirsty to prowl. I had James fetch the morning paper. Even though I've been absent for almost a week, they've continued to write about me, of course. I've been on the front page headlines every morning, my proper place, I would say. They're confused at the moment, wondering when I might strike next, wondering why I'm taking my time. Let's see what they have to say today. What's this? Scotland Yard believes murders connected in Whitechapel. Jack the Ripper makes himself known. After weeks of speculation, Scotland Yard has admitted a rash of murders in London's East End, Whitechapel district are connected. A letter was received a few days ago titled, "Dear Boss," pertaining to these murders, and the letter was signed Jack the Ripper. The murders have been particularly brutal, and Scotland Yard has warned women to stay off the streets until this madman has been apprehended. I am shaken to the core as to what our city is experiencing at the moment. The carnage that our citizens are living through must end. How can there be two killers stalking our streets? Who is this Prowler, and where has he been? And who is this Jack the Ripper? Are they one and the same? Are they in league with one another? All questions that will be answered shortly, I hope. Whatever the case, this Jack the Ripper makes the Prowler look like a nobody, an ordinary fool. Until next time, readers, this is Parker Johns wishing you safe travels. My blood boiled at what I just read. I searched trying to find something pertaining to myself and my heinous deeds to try and lift my spirits, and I found it at the bottom of the page. Damn it all to hell. I've been relegated to the bottom of the fucking page, and it was only pertaining to the curfew being lifted. This made me even angrier than I was before. Who does this arrogant bastard think he is? I'm the Prowler. There is no one walking this earth more brutal than I am. I think Mr. Johns needs a reminder of this. I tore the paper up and disposed of it like the filth that it is. Tonight is a perfect night to reappear. Countess Julia Chasterley and her husband Count Chasterley are having a charity dinner tonight, and me and the Countess have unfinished business. After tonight, there will be no questions of who is who and who is more deadly. Tonight, I put this so-called Jack the Ripper back in his place. The dinner was to be served promptly at 8 this evening, so I quickly took a bath and prepared my kit for tonight's festivities. I sharpened my tools to combat a week's worth of dullness and promptly put on my tuxedo. I then grabbed my cloak and top hat, and I was on my way to the Chasterleys. On the way, I racked my brain trying to think how I was going to pull this caper off. This was going to be difficult with so many people around. I arrived at the Chasterleys' estate around 7:35 and went inside. I conversed with fellow guests until dinner was served sharply at 8. I was sandwiched at the table between the Mayor of London and Count Chasterley himself. That always happens to me at these events. Everyone always wants to cozy up to the next Earl of Burlington. It sickens me the way these people try to masquerade their greed, constantly trying to suckle from the teat of someone more important than they. I sat there listening to their drivel, wanting it to just all be over, eagerly waiting for tonight. It was quite the tasty meal, though, I must say. Most of the night's conversations consisted of charitable events and favors being asked of myself and my father. But towards the end of dinner, the Prowler came up. It was very pleasing to hear these so-called people of importance tremble at the sound of my name. Now this conversation was going quite well. I was thoroughly enjoying it until Countess Chasterley at the other end of the table piped up and mentioned this Jack the Ripper prick. I sat there in disbelief for a moment. I can't get away from this Jack the Ripper bastard. That's all the Countess rambled on about till the dinner was over. Well, that's fine. If you think he's frightening, wait till you meet the Prowler. Tonight. The dinner finally ended, and we were saying our goodbyes as we were being ushered out. I instructed James before the dinner to drive away at the end of the affair as the others were leaving, making it seem as I was inside, leaving as well. I hung towards the back of the pack, and while everyone was distracted, I snuck away to a closet close by. I cracked the door so I could look out, and while the coast was clear, I leapt out and made my way up the stairs quickly without being seen, where I waited in a guest bedroom near the Chasterleys' chambers. After about a half hour of waiting, the door handle began to jostle. I quickly leapt up from the corner of the bed and hid behind the door. It was the maid, and in my haste I left my bag sitting on the bed. The maid looked confused and started to reach for my bag. I quietly closed the door and walked up behind her, wrapping my hands around her neck. I quickly turned her around and reached down into my bag, pulling out my large surgical knife. I then raised it to her throat and cut her from ear to ear, tossing her body on the other side of the bed. I waited patiently for at least another hour until I knew everyone was asleep. I made my way out of the side room and quietly crept into the Chasterleys' chambers, knife in hand. I went over to the Count Chasterley's side first and bludgeoned him with the handle of my knife, incapacitating him while I took my time with his wife. I then leapt on top of the Countess and drove my knife into her stomach, twisting the blade and ripping it up towards her throat. I removed her organs, then retrieved the hatchet from my bag and drove it into her skull. I could hear Count Chasterley start to stir next to me as he started to come to. I repositioned myself and got on top of him, driving my hatchet into his sternum. I then proceeded to chop off his arms and legs as my trophies, leaving him to bleed to death next to his wife. I then collected my instruments and trophies and quietly snuck out of the manor, where I met James in the carriage waiting for me about a half-mile down the road. On the way back home, I sat and basked in what I had just done. After tonight, no one will ever question the Prowler ever again. I must admit, I smugly left a note at the scene, above the bodies of the dismembered Count and Countess, written in blood on the wall, said, "Beat that, Jack. I will not be bested by some amateur. This is my era. These are the Prowler's streets, and this is my city. So let's see what they have to say about that. It's your turn, Jack." I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.